Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live today. And hopefully you're joining us live, or you may be watching this back later. So I'd like to welcome Mark Finch and Bob Cooney, who are just joining us here now. So we're going to be talking about all things markerless motion capture and the impact on all things VR. We're covering location-based entertainment, this rapidly changing industry, and what this means for the future here and in other related fields. So thank you, Mark and Bob, for sharing the time to talk with us today. For anyone who doesn't know our speakers, Mark Finch is not only Vicon's Chief Technology Officer, but also one of the leading minds in motion capture. Mark has been with us, with Vicon, since 2017, when we acquired iMeasureU, the company that Mark founded in his native New Zealand. So, becoming CTO in 2019, Mark has spent the last 3 years leading a dedicated team focused on developing Vicon's Markerless motion capture solution in Oxford. And this culminated in the debut at SIGGRAPH with our friends at Artanim and Dreamscape earlier on this year, back in August. And joining Mark, thank you for your time today. We have with us Bob Cooney. While I'm sure you need no introduction to some people here, I will give you an introduction for those people who don't know you yet. So Bob is renowned for always staying on the leading edge of technology, predicting both technology and business trends. Bob, you're considered widely the world's foremost expert on location-based virtual reality. So as the author of the book Real Money from Virtual Reality, Bob, we know you're the go-to-market strategist behind the launch of the world's most successful location-based entertainment products. Having launched the world's first successful laser tag company, Bob has mentored some of the top 20 VR manufacturers and operators over the last 20 years. And also, you've been called the Gordon Ramsay of VR because you cut through all the hype and get to the truth. So that's enough from me. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Throughout this conversation, I'll be trying to keep an eye on the chat to handle any questions. Any questions we don't get to in our conversation today, we'll follow up with offline. And this session will be available after today for anyone who wants to watch it again, who couldn't make it to the live session. It'll be on our LinkedIn page. So let's kick off. Mark, if you can start us off. I mentioned earlier briefly about SIGGRAPH and the debut of Vicon's Markerless motion capture technology. For anyone who wasn't there, can you tell us a bit about what went on at the show? Why start with VR, and what was the reaction to this news?
Sure, great. Thanks for the introduction, Melissa, and great to have you on board, Bob. So SIGGRAPH, for those who missed it, you really missed a beauty. I got to say, it was a really fun experience. So what we did there, we had been working with our dev partners, Artanim and Dreamscape, to deliver a full end-to-end LBE location-based entertainment solution. So powered by our Markerless mocap, and sort of we had 6 people in real time immersed in virtual reality. So we had their Clockwork Forest experience, which is the new experience that Dreamscape have released back in August. And we used, I guess, our new Markerless mocap to do the full body. And we had used additional markered mocap in there as well to really exploit and show that it's actually multimodal, right? So it's not one or the other. So we used our pulsars that is the standard way that Dreamscape use in their current tracking to look at props and headsets. So just really exposing that we can use both existing modalities together, because a lot of our customers will want to use certain marker-based mocap for props and whatnot, right? So some of the challenges that we kind of had in that, I mean, the biggest thing for immersive reality is the latency. So the time that it takes you to take your image, your pictures, and do all your computational sort of your math, and then feed the user the experience and drive that motion that they're seeing. If there's any lag in what they're doing to what they experience, so when you move your head, if there's any lag in that, you get this dissociation with reality. So there's basically a threshold that you have to be above, that you can't be slower than that threshold, because otherwise you get this dissociation with reality. So that was kind of one of the major challenges we had there. But it was incredible. We had 6 people running in real time, and I think we ran for 3 days. It went seamlessly for the entire 3 days, and the reactions from the people on site were just, I mean, you can't make this up. When they take the headsets off at the end, they're just like speechless, you know. And people were saying that it's the best thing that they've ever seen at SIGGRAPH, and they've been going there for the better part of sort of 15 years. So I think, you know, this new modality that removes the barriers to bringing people into that immersive environment, right? You don't have to put things on your body, right? So you already have that ability to kind of just walk into a room, put a headset on, and be immersed. That was a real kind of special time, and it was quite fulfilling to watch that from the sidelines. Yeah. And I guess then on your last question of why virtual reality first, right? I mean, we kind of, you know, Markerless is a big project, right? And there are lots of, you know, in the different markets that we're in, and we'll talk about the VFX and the life sciences a little bit later, but they all have their needs, that they care about things a little bit more than others, right? And like I kind of said, for the location-based entertainment, it's the believability, it's that ability to be immersed within the environment, so that you don't know that you don't cognitively think that I'm not here, I'm immersed, right? So that sort of latency and that believability are kind of the key points within the LBE. And because we have our true end-to-end solution, you know, using our hardware, our trusted infrastructure, right, we kind of use that to leverage this going into the LBE market. So that was sort of, you know, and working with Dreamscape and Artanan really helped us focus on the things that mattered to them, so that we could really deliver that end-to-end solution. So that's kind of why LBE first. And I mean, it's so cool, right, Bob? Like, you know.
Yeah, you know, you talked about the reactions, and it never gets old to me seeing people's initial reactions and to, you know, VR, and when they're fully immersed and they walk around, and that believability, the fantasy reality line really blurs the more freedom you have in a VR space, right? So if you're tethered and you feel the pull of the cable, or you know you're wearing a backpack, like all of that stuff slows down that fantasy reality line blurring, and so I'm really excited to just try this, where you just chuck on a headset and you're in. I think it's I'm really sorry I wasn't at SIGGRAPH, but I was not sorry I wasn't surfing in Portugal.
Yeah. I mean, but it's interesting, because, you know, you see the people put the headset on, and they, you know, the first thing you do, you look around and, oh yeah, this is cool. I'm in a box, right? It's like, yeah, this is normal. And then I guess the way the experience draws you in, you know, you have this mirror that then comes up, and, you know, we had to kind of sort of say, yeah, look at yourself, that's you in the mirror. And then they all look up, and then Chris is like the guy kind of, you know, our CMO doing all the onboarding, is like, that's you can wave at yourself. And they're like, you kind of like, let's take, and then their hand goes up, and then they wave, and then they look at their hands, and then you could just, it's a script, right? You could see them processing this immersion, right? And then they wave, and then look at them, and they high five the person next to them, and then they're still standing still. And Chris is like, you know, you can move around. This is, and it's like, they both look at it. Everyone looks at their feet. They lift their legs up. Oh, these are my legs. These are my hands. You know, you start to have that comfort that actually I'm in charge of what is in here. It's and then you see that immersion. It's just really beautiful to watch. Yeah.
So Bob, as the expert in this space, Markerless is such a big topic, and what do you think the implications are for the VR industry, which has bounced back phenomenally over the last few years? What's the future got in store?
Yeah, I think, look, when I first heard this was coming to SIGGRAPH and I was talking to Aaron Grosky from Dreamscape about it too, and how excited he was. I think there's, and again, I wrote a book called Real Money from Virtual Reality, and I tend to be, I'm a pragmatist about this stuff, right? And so the challenges with, companies like Dreamscape and The Void and these high-end full body tracking experiences, despite the fact that the initial impressions by people are blown away, as you've described, Mark, like people are like, oh, it's the best thing I've ever done. It can be just hard to make money running them because of all the friction involved. And so, the promise of this technology in markerless motion capture in reducing the friction at every level of the operation is critical. Like, so on the operational side, lower labor costs, less gear to put on means you don't have people tied up with employees tied up with guests for as long on the onboarding process, which means they can do more tasks, which means your labor rate comes down, which increases your profitability. Higher throughput means that for every given dollar invested in space or equipment or whatever, you're going to put more people through more rapidly, so you're generating more revenue. And all of that stuff is just reduces friction, not only for the employees, so you have hopefully less training, less turnover, less cost there, but then on the customer experience, like you talked about, Mark, people's experience where they go in and the first thing they do is they look at their hands and they realize their hands are, they can do this. And then if there was, leap motion, they could use that to move their fingers. And they're like, wow. And people would spend 5 minutes just doing this. Like, it's just fascinating. And then they look in the mirror and they see each other. But at some point, when you're only tracking wrists and ankles, inverse kinematics come into play, right? And the avatars are just wonky. They're just, if my pant leg goes over the marker on my ankle, my leg looks like it's out like this all of a sudden. And the AI and the inverse kinematics just weren't up to snuff to be able to overcome those breaks in immersion. And so, for me, like, that is going to lead to more magic. And magic is what makes this stuff really appealing and drives ticket prices and referral revenue from you telling your friends about it and social media and all of that. And these are all little things. These are like all little incremental things that add up to a massive sea change for the industry. And I think that, it's going to hopefully, we saw, we've seen, we saw The Void come in and everybody kind of ducked and covered under the cover of COVID, using that as an excuse for going out of business. But those business models just didn't work for a number of reasons. And I think this new technology, won't solve all those problems, but it's going to solve a lot of them. And it's going to we're going to start to see a new spurt of growth from companies coming in, applying this technology and taking another run at it. And so I think that from just a purely economic standpoint, even if it doesn't affect the CapEx, because it's unclear to me, how this may or may not impact CapEx. The camera's more expensive than the other ones. That makes up for the fact that I don't have these active markers and I think just the operational efficiencies and the better experience is going to change the game.
Yeah. And I, one of the key design sort of challenges from our side is that user experience journey, right? Is understanding what, first from the user using the equipment, but then also the experience required from the staff to run the system, right? How often you have to calibrate it? How often, do you have to, all these things that at the moment you have to do with the existing solution, which are quite cumbersome, and you need, the level of talent that needs to be there to be able to troubleshoot if anything goes wrong, and that's expensive.
Yeah, right? Especially on a Tuesday night when you only have 8 customers, but you have to be open anyway, right? And so, I can have my technical staff on the weekends, but if I have to have them there 80 hours a week during an operating week, it can become really challenging. Yeah.
So our kind of vision in that sense is to almost become kind of, autonomous in a sense that it's kind of put in, put on, push button, it runs, right? It's, again, that's the utopia from any kind of technology provider, so that, we are there hidden to the consumer, because, we shouldn't be front and center, right?
That's the magic part, right?
Yeah.
So Bob, I think you summarized it quite nicely. I mean, is that frictionless entry, the issue of CapEx. It's quite a complicated technology landscape, and there are other players in the market. What do you think, anything else aside from that the VR space really needs from Markerless or manufacturers to continue growing and thriving?
Yeah, look, I think, Mark, you hit it. You know, like really understanding the operational side of the business. I think too many companies came into this space with this, if I build it, they will come, or they're just enamored with the technology. And we see what I call false positive reactions all the time. Like everyone's first VR experience, no matter how good or bad it is transcendental, right? It's like, whoa, what just happened, right? And then solution providers brought these things to market, and they put people in them, and they take those reactions to say, okay, I've got a business here. No, what you do is you've just done a magic trick, and the magic trick has wowed your audience, but that doesn't mean you have a business. And so, you know, getting a better understanding of the real operational challenges that go beyond just making a fun experience for people that they might be willing to buy a ticket for, that drives the profitability of an enterprise. Because if the enterprise isn't profitable, it's not going to grow, it's not going to sustain, and the ecosystem collapses. And so, you know, to me, that you just nailed it. Is like, how do we, you know, how does everybody in the ecosystem become more informed and empathetic with the operator, like what they actually have to go through? Because I see a real lack of understanding and empathy between the technology providers and the people who actually run these things.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, just to take that a bit further, and you know, Vicon is 40 years old next year, right? So we've been doing mocap for a long time, and understanding, that journey of the customer, you know, regardless of the industry, is a learned experience, right? And through that sort of years of knowledge and the infrastructure that we've built and have put in place, you know, in the other industries, really, I think, is the foundation of what's enabled us to put this Markerless solution into the LBE, right? Because that's all true and tested, and like, you know, it's reliable, it works, and it's it comes from all of the experience and the learnings that we've kind of been building over the last sort of, you know, few decades and whatnot. So it's exciting to really enable this LBE industry to take a hold of that and explode. And it's exciting to see the possibilities of what that will enable, right?
Yeah,
totally. I mean, even Dreamscape, how they you know, you're in a 5x5 meter sort of area, but the experience, like, I mean, the complexity, and you don't know where you are. You don't think you're in a box, right? They take you on you ride an ant into the middle of sort of a clock, right? I mean, it's incredible the what they can do with that experience, and it's as more providers kind of come into that, you know, the journeys you can take people on by utilizing such a small footprint, but actually you're not, right? It's exciting to see what's going to happen there.
And look, and I think the combination of, you know, Wi-Fi 6E streaming and, you know, and stuff like the Focus 3 that handles that, and then the Markerless mocap and no backpacks, and so now all of a sudden you can actually put people in closer proximity to each other, and if they bump into each other, you're not worried about cables getting caught up and tech breaking, and so it's going to create more efficiency in the operational throughput and the you know, players per square foot, revenue per square foot model, because the number one cost, the two top costs of all of this stuff is rent and labor.
Yeah.
And, you know, and if you can, so you're hitting both of those now, right? You're talking about, you know, more density of players, and I don't know what's going to happen with occlusion and how many people you can put into those spaces. We'll have to see how that plays out. You know, but the more people we can cram into a space, and I use cram lightly, that's probably not the right term. We don't want them sardines. We want them to be able to move around and have an experience. But you know, the more people you can put in a square meter of space, and with the less technology and no occlusion, and then track that, and, you know, at the same time reducing the labor, you know, I think these are the things that stopped. Those were the headwinds and reliability and all the other things that really got VR, location-based VR, to get to a certain point and then stalled during COVID. A lot of people wanted to blame it on COVID. It was happening regardless of COVID. COVID gave everybody a bit of a breather and maybe even let the technology catch up a little bit to what we needed. So now as this second go, I think we've got a better chance of running, profitable operations.
Yeah.
And with everything that you've just said, it kind of feels like with the emergence of Markerless, the industry is on the cusp of a tipping point. What do you think the future has to hold? I mean, Bob, Mark, whichever one of you wants to take this, I would love to know your thoughts.
Good, Mark. Oh, you want me to go? Yeah, I don't know if I would use tipping point yet. I think, I don't, cross the chasm, tipping point, whatever you want to call it. I think we've been like up against the chasm for a little while now in location-based VR. And I kind of do think that 2024 is going to see the absorption of these technologies, but now developers have to get their hands on them. They have to turn them into actual, products and solutions that get out to the market, and the operators have to get them and buy them and deploy them. And so, bricks and mortar, it's really, we're in the tech business, but this isn't SaaS. This is bricks and mortar, and it moves slowly. And I think that when you have the technology industry pushing up against the bricks and mortar industry, there's a lack of understanding there of what it really takes to deploy, and it takes a lot longer. And that's created some, I think, a lot of frustration on the tech side. And that's like one of those empathy things that I've mentioned, is a lack of understanding. Is, family entertainment centers, it can be a 2 to 3 year sales cycle selling into some of these places if they're building from the ground up a new building and getting land and permitting and design and all this stuff. So I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think this is going to be a slow rollout of this new technology, and it's going to take some time. So I just want to manage everyone's expectations. But I do think that it's going to allow new business models to emerge, or optimized business models. And the other thing that's happened during this whole thing is the movie theater industry has gone sideways, right? From, between strikes and COVID and streaming, you talk about an industry that's in disarray. And so we've got a lot of real estate in that space as well, that they're trying to figure out. The theater exhibition companies trying to figure out, what do I do with all this space? They've got all these theaters, and now seeing this, immersive entertainment that we know fans want more opportunities, and studios want to give them the opportunities to interact with these characters and these storylines in more meaningful ways. And, people like Netflix doing Stranger Things pop-ups and Army of the Dead VR experiences. And so I think that this convergence of this massive disruption in the cinema industry with this new technology coming in and location-based VR, my expectation is in the next 3 to 5 years, people will be able to go to cinemas and have more immersive, meaningful, high-value experiences with these, brands or intellectual properties, characters, stories, universes, whatever you want to call them. And that's one of the things I'm the most excited about in the space, is how that plays out.
Before we go on to you, Mark, just for a second, just had a question in. When do you think the Markerless motion capture technology will replace traditional IR performance capture for productions? I mean, obviously not VR, but a related adjacent industry. I know it's difficult to, predict that precisely, but just be interested on both of your thoughts on that. And then we'll come back to you, Mark, and talk about your vision.
Yeah, I mean, I going through this transition or this development as I was going to kind of dovetail from Bob's comment before on his vision of where the industry is going. My kind of sort of, I'm a tech geek, so I kind of look at everything under the hood, right? And everything that's enabled us to where we are now is still at its infancy. All the machine learning, all the AI that's been put into, that drives this Markerless technology is still at the very, very infancy of its possibilities, right? So as sure that Bob, you're the sorry, my light keeps turning off. as the industry adopts these technologies, it's going to flourish, like you said. But I think as the technology matures, it'll enable a lot of that as well. And coming to the question, Melissa, I don't think that in the next decade at least, I don't think it's a replacement, right? It's another modality, right? It's another tool in the toolbox, and showing that at SIGGRAPH with actually you can use markers with props, right? Which are difficult to do, and why wouldn't you? Right, you can track the headset and any prop you want with a known Thank
you, Apple.
With the known technology, right? And when I come to kind of a little bit later, when I start to talk about the movement into the other markets, right? The discussions we've been having and how to utilize this into their existing pipelines. They're all of the customers we're talking to. They understand and celebrate the all the good things of traditional motion capture, right? And the things we've talked about today, what Markerless is enabling in the LBE world is this removing barriers, right? There are lots of applications that aren't utilizing motion capture because there's too many barriers. But the use cases that are using motion capture, your high-end kind of AAA games or whatnot, they understand the need for that precision, and I don't think that will change just yet, or in the next decade at least. Right?
What about like this? I'll use the term creator economy, right? I mean, there's so many. We're seeing, what was the new sci-fi, The Child, that new sci-fi movie that just came out, where the director was talking about, blockbuster movies with effects with backyard budget, my word, not his, right? And it was about the AI that the guy had to save, and the AI was basically a child robot, and then he decided he was supposed to kill it, and then he decided he wanted to save it. But like the production values are going up as the costs are coming down, and this technology seems to be, it's going to make it more accessible to people who don't have the creator. Thank you, Wyatt. Don't have the access to this high-end technology. And I wonder if it's not going to just, again, continue to compress the gap between what the haves and the have-nots can create in a time when the audience is really interested in what individuals are able to put out there in the world. And I wonder if you're not a part of that evolution over the next 5 years or so that really starts driving, more comparative experiences between people with massive budgets and people with no budgets.
Absolutely. And that's the removing barriers, right? Is people don't have access to high-end motion capture, but the creative minds, that what they could do with a system that is good enough for their purpose.
Good enough.
Yeah. Right. That's kind of, if we go into that production pipeline, right? For the VFX industry, that the big dogs, they have their performance stages, which they'll continue to use, right? Because that's kind of how they build their movies. But in the development of the kind of the idea, the storyboarding, the previs, all the stuff that's done before the production, right? You don't need to put them through that, and it's expensive, right? So what we're starting to kind of understand is with these pioneer sort of program, which I'll kind of talk about later, but the customers that are joining us on that VFX journey is actually the rapid prototyping of an idea, the storyboarding through a previs, blocking things out, right? The same modality will be super useful in those parts of that production pipeline, right? So it's
And it's interesting you mention all these other industries, because I think Markerless has bleed through to all of them. Something that came up in the chat is the VR training industry. Again, serious games, that's quite a relevant application for Markerless here. What's your take on that, Mark, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, it's an enabler, right? You know, you don't have to have, you know, I can imagine the you set up a volume that is easy to use. You have some props that need to be in there, right? You can change the scene, the scenario of whatever you're trying to change, right? Whatever you're trying to train them with, sort of super easily. So I think that's it's an enabler, right?
Yeah. I also wonder about, again, you know, what's the tech stack look like in the future, and are do the cameras become somewhat commoditized and standardized, right? With, you know, machine vision and them using it for security and using it for robotics and using it for assembly line tracking, and like, you know, and do we wind up having, you know, the same camera infrastructure all of a sudden now doing, you know, human tracking and body tracking in virtual reality or augmented reality training experiences? Like, it's going to be really interesting over the next 10 years to see how the you know, the hardware stack winds up potentially getting commoditized, and how that shifts the landscape of the businesses moving more towards cloud computing, AI, and the value prop on the supplier side, you know, kind of abstracting from hardware and moving more and more and more into software, because these are really all like, what percentage of, Mark, would you say the solution in markerless mocap is software versus hardware now?
Well, I mean, I think this may be where we disagree, because to me, it's a combination of both, right? It's the system, it's that end-to-end, you know, experience, that system that you're delivering, and I think that's, you know, where a lot of the competitors within the markerless arena, they don't own that end-to-end platform like we do, right? And that's, you know, you talk to them, and if you know, the first thing they say, oh, it's the cameras that's the bad part of it, right? It's the blame game, right? And
the old Microsoft it's the old Microsoft Dell argument when your computer stops working, right?
Yeah. Point the finger, right? But I mean, and you know, we know this. We know how important it is to really, you know, control, right? Like actually capturing the pixel, the time to deliver those pixels, processing it, and then giving that you know, that information back, right? That entire pipeline is what enables, especially the LBE, right? Because that's latency and the reliability of data sort of delivery. So, you know, I don't know, you know, will the hardware be commoditized? I mean, I couldn't say, you know, but as we start to kind of, you know, as the ML kind of software side of things starts to mature, a lot of that will be ported, you know, downstream embedded into the hardware, which will sort of again make that data, that system a little bit more optimized.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think time will tell on that front, right?
So we've had a couple of technical points, technical questions come through in the chat. One is about positive player or subject identification in markerless, and, you know, how are we solving or planning to solve for the way that the system matches which player is in what position. And also there's a question about latency for markerless.
So I guess, yeah, John, that's yeah. So, I mean, at the moment, you know, for the LBE specifically, right, they have pulsars on the headsets, right? So they are identified through the true and trusted marker-based sort of identification, right? So they are identified through that pulsar, because they're wearing a headset anyway. So why wouldn't you leverage that, right? You know, as you start to pull that off, yeah, sure, you start to you know, there are challenges in that identification, but I mean, there are, you know, again, future gazing, right? Everyone is individual, whether it's the way they walk, the way you know, the standard kind of measurements of size, right? you can use a bunch of that to help customize and personalize the identification of those, right?
Yeah, but like, I think what you said, Mark, is spot on. Why?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many bigger other problems you could put towards solving, because you're always going to have some kind of wearable. And even as the wearables get smaller and lighter, my guess is the active beacons will become smaller and lighter as well. And those shrink together.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the latency question?
What is the latency?
Yes.
That was one of my questions.
Yeah.
So what is the latency?
Yeah, right now, and what's your target like?
I think at the moment we are rather than give numbers, we're fast enough to notice, right? And that was kind of that was the with working with Dreamscape and Artanum, right? You have thresholds of, you can't be over 60 milliseconds before you start to sort of understand or feel a lag in the system. And so we did work very closely with Sylvan and the team of making sure that it was fast enough to not detract from any of the experiences. And actually at SIGGRAPH that was delivered like on point, right? And that's LBE. The people who have had bad experiences are because of the latency, right? I can't put a headset on, I feel sick, right? Because there's dissociation. And actually our CEO, she's one of those that says I can't put a headset on, right? But we put her in this and she was fine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. Thank you. So we're just almost coming up for the last 5 minutes. So just to end on something a bit fun, I just wanted to ask, what's your dream scenario for Markerless? I mean, what does that mean? What does that look like? Does it have applications wider afield? Where would you see things going? Mark?
Yeah, I mean, for us, this is an industry defining moment, right? In motion capture, it is gonna this new modality is another tool in the toolbox that our customer base can use for their existing mocap solutions, right? But also enabling these new ideas or use cases that could never have been even dreamt up because of they didn't have access to those kinds of tools, right? So for the life sciences, for example, right, you start to put this, you think about the same production pipeline that from the VFX. You have your precision stage, and here you have your hospitals that need that precision. They are going to stick with mocap because that's kind of part of what they do, and the reliability, that's what it is, right? But you go further down the kind of the chain of that production, right? It's people aren't going through mocap at the moment because they have to put markers on everyone, or a lot of them have to take their clothes off because doing gait analysis, you have to you can't have baggy clothes, right? And for the aged population, you can't do that, right? So there are things that because you will enable people going through these mocap sort of scenarios will add way more value than some of the existing sort of work processes that they have, right? And I'm excited to see what that's going to open up. I mean, and virtual reality translated into the life sciences is another kind of great example, right? You put a patient into a VR environment, right? And you're rehabbing a shoulder or going through. You have a virtual trainer to help them rehab through whatever injury they're trying to go through, right? And again, you have a markerless sort of mocap set that is tracking everything, right? And you have that level of engagement. I mean, it's our customers that will be the champions of all of this, right? We're kind of enabling the technology for them to do all that, right? So that I mean, that's my dream, yeah.
And leading on from that, this is also a question that's come from the chat as well, and it kind of fits in with what you were saying. You know, can you foresee a future where customers will use their own data sets to then start training the large vision models powering the Markerless technology?
Yeah, and this is, machine learning is so new, right? And data is what drives the applicability of those models in the real life, right? And we understand that all of our customers have their own problems and their own challenges that they're solving. So the idea is to develop an infrastructure that actually we have a core model that it's trained on sort of our large vision model, right? But then sort of again, future gazing, giving the ability for customers to make that bespoke to the solution that they're trying to solve, right? So having a training mechanism that they can then sort of add into that to facilitate those styles. Again, this is the vision, but reality is a bit different at the moment, right? Yeah.
Always. And Bob, what's your view on your vision of the future? I mean, what exciting things can you see on the horizon? And do you have any other interesting projects that you can tell us about?
Look, I think the thing I'm the most excited about is, and I think it dovetails into this technology, is, I'm seeing a trend of, and this kind of comes down to what Apple, has announced with the Vision Pro is a new user experience, right? And I think people talk about use cases. We need more use cases. And I think there's so many use cases, I can't even name them all. If you gave me a day, I'd miss them. I'd miss a bunch of them. It's the user experience that's been lacking with virtual reality. And I think that, this technology allows computing to be more human, right? We communicate through physical signals all the time. And we don't capture that even with just marker-based tracking. We're only capturing a few points. And I think that, really looking at the future, the combination of voice recognition, which is getting better and better and better, faster and faster and faster due to AI, eye tracking technology, motion capture, all of those things are going to make our ability to interact with the computer world feel really human. And right now there's been this separation between technology and humanity. And I think that we're going to see, this convergence for better or worse. Won't get into that philosophical debate in the remaining 60 seconds we have. But that's the thing that excites me the most is I think that our relationship with computing and technology is going to shift dramatically in the next 10 years to the point where it feels more human. And we'll see what everybody does with that, and what creators are going to be able to create leveraging this technology. I have no idea what's going to happen, and that's the most exciting part.
Yeah. The creativity of people is amazing, right? And just giving them a tool that they can do whatever they want with it. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you both so much. So we're pretty much out of time, but thank you, Mark and Bob, for being here today. Thank you for sharing all your insights, and thank you to everyone who's taken part live, or if you're watching this back. I think there were some questions we probably didn't get to, but we'll try our best to follow up with those afterwards. So thank you once again, everyone, for attending. And this link.
Mark, you were going to talk about the Pioneer program. I think it's important enough to go late. Sorry, somebody just posted that.
Yeah. Okay. So we have this Pioneer program that we have asked our customers to or future customers to sign up to be a part of the journey to help define and refine the use cases for the particular industries as we start to productize this for those different industries, right? So at the moment, we're focusing on the VFX as our next market, right? And we have, again, sort of three phases that we're going to go through with that. We have our cornerstone customers, which have already been identified. We have a beta set, which will be part of a beta program that will get solutions to use and test, right? And then an early adopters program, which for those also asking about rough timelines, that is kind of the phases towards a delivery of a product, right? After the early adopters, you have your product release. That program is in flight, right? We are sort of, I know we've only put one mass comms out, but we are starting to just really refine and define what that is. And at sort of some of the conferences, we're looking at having some round table discussions and whatnot, but all of that will come through the comms. But I think, the importance of that program is again, utilizing the creativity of our customers to help make sure that we're delivering what the market wants, right? So that, yeah. And
Mark, where do people go to get more information on that?
Our marketing team, Melissa. It's Vicon/Pioneer program, or Pioneer is the URL.
Link in the notes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And sorry to cut you off, Mark. That was a really important thing for everybody here to know. Yeah. So if you did want to have further conversations with Vicon, and Bob, I know you're there too. We're on the HTC Vive booth at IAPA in Orlando, Florida, later on this month. And we'll be providing more information from that on Vicon's social channels and on our website as well. But like we said, keep in touch. Visit the Vicon website, sign up for the Pioneer program and our newsletter, and we'll make sure you see all of those things. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Great to
Thanks
chat.
for having us.
Yes.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Bye.